The crimson suns of Cythera cast long shadows across the battlefield where the remnants of the human resistance lay scattered like broken toys. Commander Marcus Chen watched from behind a crumbling barrier as his last squadron fell under the merciless assault of the Cytherian forces. The war between humans and the alien empire had raged for 3 years, and today marked what would likely be its bloody conclusion. Marcus gripped his plasma rifle tighter, his knuckles white beneath his battle-worn gloves. Around him, the air crackled with energy blasts and the dying screams of his soldiers. He had led them into what was supposed to be a strategic retreat, but the Cytherians had anticipated their movements. It was a massacre. Through the smoke and chaos, a towering figure approached. General Varix, one of Queen Thelenia's most feared commanders, strode forward with the fluid grace typical of his species. His chitinous armor gleamed in the alien sunlight, and his 4 eyes fixed on Marcus with predatory interest. "Surrender, human." Varix growled, his voice a symphony of clicking mandibles and guttural tones. "Your people are finished. The Queen has special plans for their former commander." Marcus stood slowly, casting aside his weapon. There was no point in further resistance. His men were dead or dying, and continuing would only add to the senseless carnage. As the Cytherian soldiers bound his hands with energy shackles, he caught sight of the massive transports descending from the storm-darkened sky. The war was indeed over. The journey to the royal palace took 3 days through hyperspace, during which Marcus was kept in a containment cell barely large enough for his human frame. The Cytherians, with their insectoid physiology, clearly hadn't designed their ships with human prisoners in mind. Through the small viewport, he watched as alien stars streaked past, each one taking him further from the ruins of his homeworld. Queen Thelenia's palace was a monument to excess and power, rising from the surface of Cythera's capital planet like a crystalline mountain. Its walls seemed to pulse with an inner light, and towers spiraled impossibly high into the violet atmosphere. As Marcus was escorted through the main entrance, he couldn't help but marvel at the architectural feat before him, even as he steeled himself for whatever fate awaited. The throne room was vast enough to house a small city. Bioluminescent panels cast an eerie glow across polished stone floors that reflected everything like still water. At the far end, upon a throne carved from what appeared to be a single massive gem, sat Queen Thelenia. She was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Unlike her soldiers, Thelenia's features were more refined, almost elegant, though she retained the characteristic chitinous plates that marked her species. Her crown seemed to float above her head, held in place by some form of energy field, and her eyes, all 6 of them, regarded Marcus with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "So," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of wind chimes mixed with the authority of absolute power, "this is the human who has caused us so much trouble." Marcus met her gaze without flinching. "Your Majesty," he said, his tone neither submissive nor defiant, simply respectful. "You do not bow." Thelenia rose from her throne, her movement fluid and predatory. "Your people have fallen, your world burns, and yet you show no proper respect." "With respect, Your Majesty, I am a soldier, not a courtier. I bow to no one save my own conscience." A ripple of movement went through the assembled courtiers, chittering sounds that might have been laughter or outrage. Thelenia, however, seemed intrigued. "Fascinating. Your people fought bravely, I will grant you that. It's almost a pity we had to exterminate them." She circled him slowly like a predator, studying its prey. "Tell me, Marcus of the humans, what should I do with you?" "That's for you to decide, Your Majesty. I am your prisoner." Before Thelenia could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance to the throne room. A group of prisoners, human refugees who had somehow survived the final assault, were being herded in by Cytherian guards. Among them, Marcus recognized several faces: Dr. Sarah Williams, his chief medical officer, Lieutenant James Morgan, barely out of basic training, and a handful of civilians who had been caught up in the war's final days. The guards were being unnecessarily rough, shoving the humans forward with the butts of their energy weapons. One guard in particular seemed to take pleasure in the abuse, striking an elderly woman who had stumbled. "That's enough," Marcus said sharply, stepping forward despite his restraints. The guard turned, mandibles clicking in amusement. "The pet speaks," he said in heavily accented standard. He raised his weapon again, aiming for the woman's head. "Stop!" The word echoed through the throne room with surprising force, but it wasn't Marcus who had spoken. From the shadows behind the throne, a creature emerged that made everyone, even the guards, take an involuntary step back. The guardian beast was legend made flesh. Standing nearly 4 meters tall at the shoulder, it possessed the basic form of a great cat, but with crystalline protrusions along its spine and claws that crackled with bioelectrical energy. Its 6 eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, glowed with an inner fire that seemed to peer directly into one's soul. The beast had been a gift to Thelenia upon her coronation, a creation of the Empire's most talented bioengineers. It was said to be able to level a battleship with its breath and tear through armor plating like paper. More importantly, it had been specifically designed to respond only to Thelenia's voice and mental commands. So when the beast suddenly turned its gaze to Marcus and gave what could only be described as a nod of acknowledgement, the entire throne room fell silent. "Impossible." Thelenia whispered, her composure cracking for the first time. "It responds only to me. It is bonded to my bloodline, my neural patterns." But the beast continued to watch Marcus with an intelligence that was both alien and oddly familiar. When the guard raised his weapon again, the creature let out a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very bones of everyone present. "Release the prisoners," Marcus said, and to everyone's astonishment, the beast stepped forward, its massive form placing itself between the guards and the humans. The guard with the raised weapon took aim at Marcus instead. "Insolent!" He never finished the sentence. The guardian beast moved with impossible speed, for something so large, its claws raking across the guard's armor and sending him flying across the room. The other guards raised their weapons, but Thelenia's sharp command stopped them. "Hold." She descended from her throne, her 6 eyes never leaving the beast. "What is this? What sorcery have you humans wrought?" "I don't know," Marcus answered honestly. "I've never seen this creature before in my life." Thelenia approached the beast slowly, her hands extended. The creature regarded her with what might have been indifference, then turned back to watch the human prisoners. At her mental command, it should have returned to its alcove behind the throne. Instead, it remained where it was. "Fascinating," Dr. Williams whispered from among the prisoners. As the chief xenobiologist of the human forces, she had spent her career studying alien life forms. The neural pathways must be more complex than anyone imagined. Days passed in a surreal routine. Marcus was given quarters that, while clearly marking him as a prisoner, were more comfortable than the cell he'd occupied on the transport. The guardian beast seemed to have taken it upon itself to follow him, much to the consternation of both the palace guards and Thelenia herself. The queen had ordered a battery of tests on the beast, trying to understand why it had apparently bonded with a human. Cytherian scientists worked around the clock, but their instruments detected nothing unusual in either Marcus or the creature. "Your presence is disrupting the natural order," Thelenia said during one of their daily meetings. She had insisted on these sessions, claiming she wanted to understand the human mind. In reality, Marcus suspected she was as puzzled by the guardian beast's behavior as anyone else. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience," Marcus replied dryly. They were seated in a smaller chamber off the main throne room, with the beast lying contentedly at Marcus's feet like an enormous otherworldly pet. "You're sorry." Thelenia's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Your entire species has been eliminated, and you're concerned about inconveniencing me." "Survival has its own etiquette," Marcus said. "What would you have me do? Rage against fate, plot impossible escapes?" I'm here, you're here, and apparently so is your beast. We might as well be civilized about it. Thalinia studied him with her multiple eyes. You are not what I expected from the human commander who cost me so much. What did you expect? Fire, hatred, the need for vengeance. She gestured with one of her 4 arms. Instead, I find someone who accepts defeat with grace and speaks to me as if we were equals. We are equals, Marcus said quietly. In this moment, at least. You're a being trying to understand something beyond your control. And so am I. Before Thalinia could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. The guardian beast leaped to its feet, a low growl rumbling in its throat. Through the chamber's windows, they could see explosions blooming in the lower levels of the palace. Rebels! Thalinia snarled, her royal composure evaporating. The Korath faction. They've been plotting against me for cycles. The doors burst open, and General Varix rushed in with a squad of royal guards. Your Majesty, you must come to the safe chamber immediately. The rebels have breached the outer defenses. More explosions shook the palace, and the lights flickered ominously. Thalinia stood, her bio-armor beginning to glow as its defensive systems activated. How many? Initial reports suggest at least 3 divisions fully armed. They have inside help. Some of the household guard turned against us. The guardian beast had begun pacing, its agitation clear. It looked between Marcus and Thalinia as if trying to make some kind of decision. The safe chamber is on the lowest level, Varix continued. If we move now, an explosion much closer than the others cut him off. Through the now shattered windows, they could see rebel forces in the courtyard below. These weren't the standard Zetherian military. Their armor was modified, painted with the symbols of the resistance. They know where the safe chamber is. Thalinia realized. This isn't a random attack. They've been planning this for cycles. Another blast, and part of the ceiling collapsed. Marcus threw himself over Dr. Williams, who had been brought to the chamber earlier for consultation about the beast. The guardian beast made its decision. With a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the palace, the creature placed itself between the collapsed debris and the royal party. But its attention was focused on Marcus, not Thalinia. The beast will protect you, Marcus said to Thalinia, understanding something in that moment. But it won't do it for you. It will do it for me. Thalinia's eyes widened. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you want to live through this, you're going to have to trust me. Marcus stood, his hands still bound by energy shackles. And I'm going to have to trust you. More rebel forces poured into the chamber through the broken windows and damaged doorway. These were hardened veterans, their weapons trained on Thalinia. But they hesitated when they saw the guardian beast, knowing its reputation. Kill the tyrant! One of them shouted, and they opened fire. Marcus didn't think. Protect her, he commanded the beast, and the creature moved like lightning. What followed was a display of violence so swift and precise that it seemed choreographed. The guardian beast flowed through the rebels like living death, its claws and bioelectric abilities reducing them to vapor and scattered components in seconds. When the last rebel fell, the beast returned to Marcus's side, blood and fire still crackling along its crystalline spines. The silence that followed was deafening. Thalinia stared at Marcus with an expression he couldn't read. The surviving royal guards looked between their queen and the human with obvious confusion. You saved me? Thalinia said finally. Why? Marcus considered the question. Because it was the right thing to do. Because your death wouldn't bring back my people. And because I think there might be something here worth saving. Something bigger than both our people's hatred. Over the following days, as the palace's defenses were reinforced and the rebels scattered or captured, Marcus found himself in an increasingly strange position. He was still technically a prisoner, but Thalinia had his shackles removed and began involving him in discussions about security and strategy. The Korath faction has been a problem for decades, she explained one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. The guardian beast followed at a respectful distance, its presence now as natural as their own shadows. They believe the empire has grown weak, that we should be expanding our territory rather than consolidating what we have. And you disagree. Expansion for its own sake is the luxury of those who have never faced real war, Thalinia said. I have seen what conflict costs. I have mourned auspices that would break lesser beings. Marcus studied her profile in the light of Zethera's 3 moons. Is that why you're having second thoughts about genocide? The queen stopped walking. Second thoughts. About humans? About my people? Marcus faced her fully. We lost the war, Your Majesty. We both know that. But the remaining survivors, there can't be more than a few 100,000 in the entire galaxy, could be useful citizens rather than cautionary tales. You would have me show mercy to the species that killed millions of my subjects. I would have you consider that mercy might serve the Empire better than vengeance. Thalinia was quiet for a long moment. The beast chooses its own loyalty, she said finally. Perhaps there is wisdom in that choice. The guardian beast seemed to sense the shift in conversation and approached them. For the first time since the attack, it nuzzled against Thalinia, though it remained closest to Marcus. The rebels will try again, Thalinia said. General Korath himself yet lives, and he has support from other military commanders. Then we need to be ready for them. We, Marcus smiled. I can hardly let my friend here face danger alone. Over the following weeks, Marcus proved his worth beyond doubt. His tactical knowledge combined with his ability to command the guardian beast made him invaluable to Thalinia's defense of the throne. Together they uncovered and thwarted 2 more assassination attempts, each one more cleverly planned than the last. More importantly, they began to trust each other. The hatred that had driven the war between their peoples started to transform into something else. Not love exactly, but a mutual respect born of shared struggle. Your survival instinct is remarkable, Thalinia observed one night after they had successfully defended against another rebel assault. They were in her private study reviewing intelligence reports. Most humans would have tried to escape by now, or at least to kill me in some misguided revenge. I considered it, Marcus admitted, in the beginning, but the guardian beast made it clear that wasn't an option. As if summoned by the mention of its name, the beast padded into the study and settled itself between their chairs. Thalinia reached out to stroke its crystalline spines, and this time it leaned into her touch. I have been thinking about what you said, she said, about mercy serving the Empire. And? The surviving humans have been distributed across several internment colonies in the outer systems. Conditions are adequate, but not what you would call humane. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but forced himself to remain calm. What are you proposing? Integration, carefully monitored initially. But if your people can prove themselves as useful as you have? She gestured at the beast. Perhaps the guardian chooses loyalty based on worthiness rather than species. It was a start. A small one perhaps, but Marcus had learned to value small steps during his time in the palace. I would want to see them, he said, the survivors, to make sure they understand what's being offered. Of course. But first we need to deal with Korath's final gambit. My intelligence suggests he's planning something large, something desperate. They didn't have to wait long. The attack came 3 nights later, and it was unlike anything they had faced before. Korath himself led the assault, bringing not just soldiers but massive war machines, bio-engineered creatures that rivaled the guardian beast in size and ferocity. The battle raged throughout the palace complex. Marcus found himself fighting alongside Zetherian soldiers using human tactics to complement their natural abilities. The guardian beast was a force of nature, tearing through enemy ranks, but even it seemed to recognize that this final battle would determine everything. The climax came in the throne room itself. Korath, wounded but still dangerous, faced Thalinia in single combat while the battle raged around them. Marcus had been separated in the fighting, pinned down by rebel forces. You weak pretender, Korath roared, as he and the queen circled each other. You would make us slaves to lesser species. I will restore Zithera to its rightful place. Thelenia's bio-armor sparked and crackled as she readied her weapon. Your vision of strength, she replied, is built on the bones of others. True strength comes from unity, not domination. They clashed with inhuman speed and violence. Both were skilled warriors, but Korath was fresher, having avoided the main fighting. Slowly, he began to gain the advantage. The guardian beast, fighting its own battle against Korath's war creatures nearby, seemed to sense its mistress's peril. But it was trapped, surrounded by enemies that had been specifically bred to counter its abilities. That's when Marcus made his choice. Breaking cover, he sprinted across the throne room, dodging energy blasts and the crushing feet of war machines. "Guardian!" he shouted. "To the queen! Now!" Or the beast heard him across the chaos and responded instantly. With a display of power that dwarfed its previous efforts, it began carving a path through the enemy ranks heading for the duel. But it was too late. Korath had managed to get inside Thelenia's guard, his weapon aimed at her heart. "By the right of blood and battle," he declared, "I claim." His words were cut off as the guardian beast crashed into him with the force of a meteor. The rebel general was flung across the room, his armor crushed and sparking. The beast placed itself protectively over the fallen queen, its eyes blazing with fury. Slowly, Thelenia rose to her feet. She was wounded, her armor cracked but alive. She met Marcus's eyes across the throne room and nodded once. An understanding passed between them that needed no words. In the aftermath of the battle, as the palace was secured and the rebels routed, Marcus and Thelenia stood on the highest balcony, watching the sun set over Zithera. The guardian beast lay beside them, its massive form finally at rest. "The integration protocols have been approved," Thelenia said. "Your people will be allowed to prove themselves as citizens of the Empire." "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. The path ahead will not be easy. There will be those who oppose this decision, who see it as weakness." Marcus nodded. "There will be humans who resist as well. Trust doesn't come easily to people who have been at war for years." "Then we must set the example," Thelenia said. She looked at the guardian beast. "It seems we have found common ground in the most unlikely place. In the loyalty of a creature that sees beyond species to something deeper." "Yes?" Thelenia was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about why the beast chose you. My scientists found nothing unusual in your physiology, no special neural patterns or genetic markers. And your conclusion? That perhaps true leadership has nothing to do with biology or breeding. Perhaps it has to do with character, with the willingness to make the right choice, even when it costs you everything." Marcus looked at her, seeing not the alien conqueror or the enemy commander, but a being struggling to do what was right for her people, and now for his as well. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we build something new. Not human, not Zytherian, but something that encompasses both. It won't be easy, and it won't happen quickly. All the best things are worth waiting for." As if in response to their words, the guardian beast stirred, raising its great head to look at them both. In its eyes was something that might have been approval or satisfaction, or simply the contentment of a creature that had found its proper place in the universe. The war was over, the healing could begin. And in the growing friendship between a human commander and an alien queen, in the loyalty of a beast that responded to compassion rather than command, lay the seeds of a future that neither species could have imagined alone. Marcus remained in the palace no longer as a prisoner, but as an advisor helping to bridge the gap between two very different peoples. The surviving humans were given new homes, new chances to prove themselves as valuable members of the Empire. Some resisted clinging to old hatreds, but most embraced the opportunity. Thelenia proved as good as her word, implementing gradual reforms that allowed humans to rise through the ranks of society based on merit rather than birth. The guardian beast became a symbol of this new unity, responding to commands from both species, as long as those commands came from a place of genuine care and wisdom. Years passed. The integration was slow, sometimes painful, but ultimately successful. Marcus watched human children play alongside young Zetherians in the palace gardens, their laughter echoing off walls that had once resounded with war cries. "You were right," Thelenia said to him one day as they reviewed reports from the outer colonies. "Mercy did serve the Empire better than vengeance." "We were both right," Marcus corrected, "about the value of working together despite our differences." The guardian beast, now an elderly creature, but still powerful, raised its head at the sound of their voices. It had become a fixture of the palace, beloved by children of both species who grew up with stories of its role in ending the war. "I sometimes wonder," Thelenia mused, "what would have happened if the beast had not chosen you that day?" Marcus smiled. "We'll never know. But I like to think that somehow, some way, we would have found our way to this moment anyway. You have too much faith in the universe. And you don't have enough." They laughed together, queen and advisor, former enemies, who had become partners in building something unprecedented. The guardian beast made a sound that might have been laughter too, or perhaps just contentment at seeing its chosen companions at peace. As the sun set once again, over Zithera painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the three figures remained on the balcony, watching over an empire that had learned the value of diversity of mercy and of the strange ways in which loyalty could manifest. The war was history. The future was just beginning. And in the growing twilight, the guardian beast glowed with a gentle inner light. Its purpose fulfilled, its loyalty rewarded, its faith in both its queen and its chosen human finally completely justified. The story of Marcus and Thelenia became legend told in both human settlements and Zetherian cities. A tale of how enemies could become allies, how understanding could replace hatred, and how sometimes the most powerful bonds are formed not in the heat of shared victory, but in the crucible of shared adversity. And the guardian beast. It lived for many more years, a living symbol of unity between species, proof that loyalty transcends the boundaries of birth and biology. When it finally passed after a long and contented life, creatures from across the empire came to pay their respects. In its honor, a new tradition was established. Every year on the anniversary of that first meeting in the throne room, representatives from all member species of the empire would gather at the palace. They would remember the war, yes, but more importantly, they would celebrate the peace that followed. Marcus and Thelenia ruled together for decades, their partnership setting the standard for cooperation in the empire. When they passed, the torch was taken up by their successors, beings of both species who had grown up in the integrated society they had created. The guardian beast's legacy lived on in its offspring creatures that continued to choose their loyalties based not on species or programming, but on the quality of character they sensed in those around them. They served as counselors and protectors, helping to maintain the balance that their ancestor had helped create. And in the gardens of the palace, where human children still played with their Zetherian friends under the light of 3 moons, a statue stood in memory of that first guardian beast. The inscription, carved in both human and Zetherian languages, read simply, "Loyalty knows no bounds save those we place upon it ourselves." The war between humans and Zetherians was over. In its place had grown something neither side had expected. Not just peace, but partnership. Not just coexistence, but collaboration. It was imperfect, as all things are, but it was genuine, and it endured. And somewhere in the vast palace, in the quiet halls where history had been made and remade, an echo lingered, not of anger or fear, but of understanding, of the moment when 2 enemies realized they could be more together than apart. It was the echo of hope, made real of bridges built, not with force, but with trust. And it would continue to resonate through the corridors of power and the hearts of all who heard it, a reminder that even the deepest divides could be crossed when beings of goodwill chose to try. The guardian beast had shown them the way. Now it was up to all of them to follow it together into whatever future awaited among the stars.